Hey, everybody, this is Josh for another episode of the Solopreneur Grind podcast. Very happy to be joined by Sam Anthony, the founder, yournews.com. Sam, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Josh, great to be here, man. Excited about it.
I'm excited too for a few reasons because this will be, I think, an interesting conversation. Number one, talking about business. Number two, talking about news, media, what's going on in North America and stuff right now. Before we dive in, can you start with a really quick introduction, a little bit more about who you are and what you're working on?
Yeah. Again, my name's Sam Anthony. I run a hyper local news platform that's in the US, but as I was telling Josh off air, Canada's coming next. And when I say next, like in the next 4 or 5 weeks, it'll be done. Okay. So we'll have a Canadian version. So think of me as the local paper in every city in the United States with the USA Today wrapped around it. So not only do I do national news, we do city, county, market, state, regional, national. So I carry everything from somebody's Little League game to the Monday Night Football game and everywhere in between. So everybody knows the legacy media is not going to survive. For those of you who don't know, it has nothing to do with them lying. You could even believe them. It's irrelevant. It's because the younger demographic does not consume information that way. And the average age of people watching cable news or listening to radio on the dial, terrestrial radio, is 72 years old, I think. And the demographics just came out, the numbers came out from Ad Week. And the interesting part was the demographic between 25 and 54, which is the marketplace where all advertisers want to reach a big chunk, which represents in the US roughly 130 million people. Total amount of viewers in that demographic for cable news was 500,000 people for 3 months. And I'm going to tell you why, because they're watching podcasts like you. They're on TikTok, they're on Rumble, they're on Facebook, X, whatever. Okay. They're just not watching cable news. And, so you could believe that the media is lying or telling the truth. It's irrelevant when the audience is gone. There's no ad revenue. You know what happens when there's no ad revenue? Bye-bye. It's over.
Right.
So
And I
that's
mean,
where it's at.
I've thinking on that, since I left my parents' house, I have never even paid for cable, right? We have internet, we have Netflix, and then, I don't even watch much TV to begin with, but like you said, I'm reading newsletters, I'm watching YouTube videos, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, preaching to the choir here. Can you talk to us, Sam, a little bit about how did this start? How did you get into this line of business? What led to you starting it?
Background is investments, investment banking is, I worked in Chicago at a place called Lehman Brothers. I've worked at a lot of boutique firms. When I came to Florida, me and a couple guys believed that the internet was going to transform the newspaper industry. So we set out to build a platform. We funded it ourselves. We set out to build a platform that would replace the daily newspaper. I could tell you as an entrepreneur, we failed miserably. It didn't work. And so, we didn't know anything of what we were doing. So basically we were just, a few idiots trying to figure this all out. And, I ended up losing two partners. They ran out of money. I ended up picking up another one and we continued on. So, we, what we thought we figured out, and I'm going to tell you this life as an entrepreneur, when you think you figure something out, just remember you might be wrong, even when you think you're right. So what we thought was going to be the model turned out that it wasn't. And, one day I'm laying in bed and it's probably 3 a.m. and I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do now? It's the whole world's collapsing around me. And then I just had this idea that came to my head, and that was a monetization model. So remember, we do local news. The trick is, how do you get local news in every city in America? And then the monetization, because at the time, I think YouTube was the only person that did monetization. You know how people on YouTube get monetized and they share in the ad revenue. So we then had to basically just take engine out of the car. It wasn't like you just tweak a couple things and it worked, right? It's like the whole thing needed to be scrapped. And then so imagine spending all this money. You don't even know if it's going to work. And you put together the whole new model, and then it had to be tested. And then we figured out, holy crap, we're onto something. And now we're in the process of scaling. So the way our model works is, for those of you who don't know, the media industry is collapsing. I mean, there's on LinkedIn Navigator, there's over 500,000 people that call themselves freelance journalists. If you don't know what that is, that means I don't have a job. All these students that are that are coming out of school, journalism school. There's hundreds of thousands of them. Who in the hell is going to hire them? I'm going to tell you right now, nobody. Everybody's getting laid off. So for me, it's just right place, right time. So as I tell people, it'd be like going fishing, Josh. And I say, come on, let's go fishing. Great. Let me bring my fishing pole. No, you don't need it. Well, what about bait? No, you don't need it. The fish are jumping in the boat. You don't need it. It's just, that's where we're at now. So now what we do is we take these, student journalists or out of work news reporters or people who have never been in the business, and they sign up as citizen journalists. They write a story. It could be the bank robbery, the car crash, the high school football game, the city count, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, we publish that content to the subject and geography it's relevant to. They all have followings on social media. So what they do is they share their content to the people that like it on social media. They click the link to consume it on our site. We sell the ads. They get a percentage of the ad revenue. This is pretty simple stuff. Okay. The scale is we have, it's like, just think of it from the standpoint of the local paper in your town, Josh, or anybody's city. However many ads they could put on their sports page, we could do in one zip code. It's like having 70,000 times their inventory. Ads are on a best bid basis. So they're hyper targeted, and the little guy trumps the big guy because it's all based on CPM rates, cost per thousand. And the more targeted you get, the higher the rate, So like national ads, which are a penny, are going to be trumped by a zip code ad, which could be 10 cents. So that's how it works. So I hope I explained that well.
Yeah.
And by the way, every news organization on planet Earth is an aggregator. What I mean by that is people that have news, how they'll send a press release to the media, Josh, like if you're a church and you're having a bake sale, somebody from the church has to let the newspaper know. And so newspapers aggregate all that information. We're an aggregator of the identical content. We just have the ability to print it all because there's no cost and we can organize it by subject and geographies. That's why I say we're an aggregator just in every city in the United States, with Canada coming. And we're bringing all the country's information under one umbrella and creating one uniform media. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what I do will become the next mainstream media.
Very cool. It's one of those things that like totally makes sense. And I kind of think it's one of those like, why hasn't that existed that way previously? Right. But just, the
People say
evolution
that to me.
sometimes takes its time. Yeah. No, super interesting. Talk, Sam, a little bit. So you come up with that idea. How did you kind of put it into practice? And maybe usually I ask like, how'd you get your first few customers? In this case, it's I guess readers. Can you walk me through kind of proving out that product market fit before you realize you were ready to scale?
Yeah. So that's a good question because, any entrepreneur, when they're starting their business, you have to have your hands in everything. You have to know every moving part. Look, I don't know how to code, but I could tell you I work with my developer and I tell him exactly what I want. Here's how it's going to be. And we get in debates about how it's going to be done. And once we, come up with what we think is the best way, I mean, I'm intimately involved. So I know every single moving part that happens, even on the user side. So I'll give you an example. Once we got the new engine put in the car, I then had to set out to go, let's see if there's a marketplace for this, right? So I ran an ad on LinkedIn and it was, we're hiring. And I ran the ad for 24 hours and I got 160 applicants that filled out my Calendly, to talk to me. I'm like, so I was like booked for 2 months. Like, oh
This is for writers?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I had to go through every single one and have a conversation with them. And I said to myself, I am never doing this again. I mean, because it was one, and it was like a flood because they have nowhere to go. That's the issue. So I had to figure out, I had to listen to everybody. I wanted to hear about it. So this is where you start hearing all these horror stories in the media business and you start to understand. And, even they're teaching me their business. Because remember, I was not in the news business. If you want to know about investment banking, if you want to know how to structure a deal, if you want to know how to raise capital through institutions, call me. I know. You want to know, if you want to know what type of content the local paper and what they do when you bring it has to go before a review. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm just the guy reading the paper. I'm not the guy that puts it together. So I had to learn. And so it's really, really, really important that whatever your business is, you know every moving part, you talk to everybody. So it's like content creators on my site. I've gotten to the point, like we've picked up almost 800 news reporters. Well, I obviously haven't talked to all 800 of them simply because as we add them, it's a self-service and everything is automated. But, just like YouTube, I'm sure they talk to the first few people, right? But, now there's 114 million channels on YouTube. I'm sure not all of them called the CEO and had a conversation with them. But, in the beginning, you really have to do it because you want to understand your business. And then you also would like people to go, this makes a lot of sense. Like Josh just did, this makes a lot of sense. And, be able to have people that are championing your cause, because what happens is, and I'll give you an example for all the people that come on Josh's show. Josh needs to create an account with us because I have big reach, which means that now he gets the ability to be able to give you as an entrepreneur even bigger reach in our business section. Well, now that Josh understands this, Josh's going to go, well, this is kind of a no-brainer, right? That's how it works. So it's knowing every single moving part of your business and being intimately involved. And, we can get into scaling a business and then what makes your business valuable. We could do that later or today. It doesn't matter to me, but
Yeah, I mean,
this,
I definitely want to touch on that. I think one other question I had on the initial stage was, in effect, you've built a news marketplace, right? You have your content creators on one side, you have your readers on the other, and you're kind of bringing them together and you're monetizing it through advertising, which is a great model. Marketplaces in tech have been notoriously very difficult to get off the ground because you don't have to just go get clients, or you don't just have to go get one side of the equation. You have to go get two, right? In your case, you have to get your writers and your readers. Can you
Mhm.
talk about what that's been like, and how you were able to kind of, let's say, like, win on both sides?
Yeah. There's two real components to this business, and one of them is not the readers, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the content creators bring you their audience. So I'll take a content creator that may have 5,000, 50,000, 100,000 people, like Jane Ruby on Telegram. So Jane will take one of her videos and she submits it to us. We publish it in the health section, Dr. Jane Ruby. And then what she does is once that's done, she shares the link to 100,000 people, Josh, and that drives all my traffic. You see what I mean? Except I could
Yeah.
have a million Janes. It's it's basically Twitter or Facebook for news. And so it's the content that drives the readership. But when they get there to read Jane's stuff or watch the video, and then they look around and go sports, and then they look and they say, oh my God, they got the hockey game, they got the baseball games, they got this, they got auto racing, they got, politics, entertainment. So it's news by the people for the people is what it
Right.
is. So
Right.
now the second component to mine is the advertisers. And we live in a new world. The old world that Sam used to live in, because I'm one of the seniors and one of the baby boomers, is everything was done like this, cold calling. This world doesn't work that way anymore. People don't want to be sold. They don't want to pick up the phone from somebody they don't know. So the way people buy stuff now is they do it online. Maybe they listen to a show, maybe they see an ad. If they're looking for a product on Amazon, they look at all the reviews, right? They make their own decision on their purchase. So, like for us now, the second piece to this is going to be the advertisers. So I don't know, Josh, if you remember when Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, when they were building in the beginning stages, they were giving away advertising in the form of a coupon. So you would log into Google. I got one. I have one I saved the LinkedIn one because when we get ready I want my developer to see it so I could say, here's what I want to do. So having an example is the best thing to have. But what they did was they gave you a $50 coupon, let's say, or $100, and you would log in, create an account, you put in your credit card information and put in your promo code to get your $50. And then once your ad campaign was completed or almost complete, the system would notify you to say, Josh, your account balance has $5. If you'd like to continue your ad, click here to add funds, because they already had your credit card information. Ours is the same thing. So we've just created ads that very soon are going to be started to market on social media. And we're going to target the small business owners. Something like It'll be video ads, short, target your ad on your news, target to one zip code and everywhere in between. A portion of your ad revenue goes to the journalist who drove the traffic to your ad, supporting, support local, buy advertising and support local journalism or something like that. And then they could log in and buy their own ad and put in their promo code and get their free $50. So if I were to spend, and I'll give you, $10,000 to reach 1 million people, you're going to probably get 1% of them to say, I'll take advantage of this, which by the way is a big number on 1 million, 10,000 people. And then from there, you might get 2, 3, 4, 500, 600 customers, let's say between 3 and 600 paying customers every month. And now you know what the number is and you know how to extrapolate that out to say, okay, for me to go from the red to the black is going to cost this because I want to have, it'll take based on these numbers, here's my burn rate, X amount of money. And then that's the next capital raise you do. So
Right.
depending on how you're doing it, I mean, companies like mine, this is what I do is Google big. It's Facebook big. It's Twitter big. I mean, I don't plan on just doing this in the United States. For me to open up Canada as just a zip code table, which we'll get going, I plan on expanding this across the globe, every country that we can get into.
Yeah, no, very, very, very big aspirations, which we love. I actually still see coupons. They don't. I don't think they give you the first free, but what I've seen very recently, like within the last month or two, is Google and Reddit. They'll say spend 300 and we'll give you another 300 free, something like, which is in effect very similar to what you were
Yeah.
describing, and a great way to to get people to try and hopefully hooked and coming back. Can you talk, Sam, a little bit about, mentioned earlier, two things that I want to kind of connect here. Number one is when you're scaling the content creators, you can't talk to all of them. Yet, it's the quality of the content that's hopefully going to get more and more readers. So how do you vet and or police the content that's going out? Have you had issues with like writers that are bad or writers that are saying things that they shouldn't be saying or anything like that?
No. Do I think it's coming? Yes. But so keep in mind, we're a platform. So how could I possibly know what happened at the city council meeting in Beaumont, Montana, right? Or any city in America? I mean, how could any of us know? So there's a disclaimer on our platform because we're covered under Section 230. So it says when you're submitting an article, it says you agree that this is you're liable for your own content. This is your content you're producing. You're not stealing it. The photo's yours, and you're telling the truth about this story. And you do not hold your news liable. Do you accept these terms? Something like that. There's a disclaimer. So they have to actually check a box that says, nope, I'm the guilty party. You had nothing to do with it. Now, when it comes in, we look at it, we can't fact check it because we don't know. We just look at it and say, okay, what is it? It's a city council meeting in Schaumburg, Illinois. Okay, that's going to go to politics in Schaumburg, right? That's it. And we set it live. When somebody reads the story, at the bottom, there's a disclaimer that basically says, the content you're reading, your news is separate from that. We have no idea if it's accurate or not. We're a platform and it just separates ourselves from the whole thing. It's a disclaimer. So the only thing, Josh, if you're a journalist, the only thing you have is your credibility. The moment you lie, you're dead in the water. Okay. Nobody will follow you. So what I see happening is you're going to get people as you start getting bigger, you're going to get people that may not like our narrative. And they're going to start infiltrating and posting stuff that's complete BS. But let me tell you what's going to happen. If it's about that city council meeting in Schaumburg, Illinois, I'm going to get emails from people that were at the city council meeting saying, this is not accurate. It's a complete lie. This never happened. And then we'll look into it. And then you know what we'll do? We will ban them. That'll be the end of it. Okay. So it's gonna happen. It's gotta run its course, but eventually what you'll get out of it is the cream will rise to the top. And that's why I said, we'll probably get 1 million people on here that are content creators, but it's that whole 80-20 rule. Same as YouTube. YouTube doesn't have 100 million active users. They have 20% of them are active. It's that 20% of the people are making 80% of the money.
Yeah.
And That's how it works. So it'll work the same with us, but it's the massive scale and it's the void we fill because our product fills a void. There is nobody else. So, it's not like somebody can say, well, I don't want to do what you're doing. I'll say, great. Then, practice these words. Welcome to McDonald's, man. Take your order. There's no other place to go.
Yeah. No, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Let's talk, Sam, a little bit about, let's call it operations, or actually then running and growing the business. How do you, as a founder, stay productive? Whether it be working yourself, managing team members.
Initially, you have as an entrepreneur, you have as small a staff as you could possibly have. You try and do everything yourself. And the reason is you have to keep costs low. As you get bigger, you find that you can't do everything yourself and you're going to need, either some kind of expansion capital, some kind of growth capital, because it frees things up. So the example would be, Josh, you got a call from Allison, right? Allison is who you were communicating with. So I do a lot of shows. I'm booked on a lot of shows because it's the marketing that we do for the whole thing. And it frees me up to be able to do other things, but I'm booked on many shows all week because, this is the whole crux of our business, is getting the word about what we're doing. For example, the content creators. So I'll have people that may hear this show that sign up to become news reporters. I may have people that buy ads. I could have people because we're doing a equity crowdfund, which we talked about. So people will buy that. So all of it is getting out in front of people. And so you keep it small. And as you have the capital, you need to be very careful with where you spend your money. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm going to something in Tampa. It's one of the Turning Point events. So I'm going to be there and I'm about 3.5 hours away. Well, it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, I've been to many of them. Sunday's kind of a waste. Everybody is. It's not the day. Friday, you're going to have heavy traffic. So I'm just going to leave at 7 o'clock in the morning and get there for 10:30 on Saturday. And I'm going to work hard Saturday networking. And I'm not going to get a hotel and I'm going to drive all the way back. The point is that when you're limited on resources, you spend as little as you can. And even if you have an influx of cash, keep it because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right, right. Let's talk about capital. You mentioned equity crowdfunding. We don't normally talk about raising money on the Solopreneur Grind podcast because it's mostly solopreneurs who kind of want to stay that way. But more and more these days, especially with tech and AI, people are finding opportunities to grow, build out their businesses. And the reason why I'm interested in equity financing is, number one, we haven't talked about it on the show. And number two, I think most people don't know what the heck it is. And similar to the theme of this show, which is like non-traditional, the old way of doing it is kind of coming to an end. Can you talk to us a little bit about what is equity financing or
Yes.
equity crowd financing, and why did you decide to go that route?
So you hit it on the head. Like the internet has changed everything. And so look at the movies. Did you ever think that somebody outside of Hollywood would be producing movies and TV shows? I mean, I never did. Somebody told me, I would have said, you're out of your mind. Well, Hollywood's become obsolete and it's because of the internet, because nobody wants to go to a movie theater anymore when I have Amazon or Netflix or Hulu in my freaking house on my TV. There's your movie theater, right? Normally the way just think of every tech giant, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Uber, eBay, 100% of them were funded from a place called Silicon Valley. Everybody's heard of it, right? So Silicon Valley, what they do is they are entrepreneurs that recognize business models and that have massive scale, and they have relationships with institutional players that have big money that have to spend the money. And they don't go to individuals like you or I. They go to, the big institutions and they say, look, here's the company we're funding. Here's how it's going to work. And those people put in 10, 20, 30, $50 million into these deals and they scale them up. And when you're buying something called a private placement. So let's talk about Facebook or Amazon. You didn't get a call, Josh, saying, hey, we have Amazon stock at $1. Do you want to buy some before it's public? No. And the reason is because it all went to accredited investors, which means you have to have a certain net worth and a certain income. And then obviously the institutional players are all accredited investors. So it all goes to them. And the reason is the FINRA or the SEC believes that if you don't have a lot of money, you shouldn't be participating in stuff like this because it's too risky. And they're right. However, the internet rolls up and then you get something called equity crowd funds. And what I love about equity crowd funds is 100% of all of us can participate, and it's regulated. So when you buy a security, you have to give your social security number. You have to put in all your personal information. You have to put in your income, and it regulates you off your income where you can only spend so much based on your income. And by the way, anybody that fills out an equity crowd fund never says they make more than they make. So if some guy's making 200 grand a year, he puts 110 something. You always lie, which means you can invest less. And then if they want to invest more, then they get pissed. Well, I lied, it's not my income. So what's really cool is the public can participate in these. You don't have to be an accredited investor. And then the companies that do the equity crowd funds can decide what the minimum investment is. I've seen them at $50. I've seen them at $1,000. I put mine at $200 because I figure we're selling stock at $2 a share. It's an even 100 shares. Most people should be able to afford something like that. But and also you're not allowed to advertise a private placement, but you can advertise one of these funds. And so now what I do is I'm on shows. I just created some ads that we could do pre-rolls on YouTube and on Rumble and different places, which promotes the equity crowd fund, which means you can now raise capital by bypassing Silicon Valley. So what I think is going to happen is Silicon Valley is going to be obsolete. I mean, give it another 10 or 15 years, and what do you need them for? Because you have an army just in the United States of a couple 100 million people in the workforce, right? That could spend $500, $200, $1,000, and all you have to do is market to them, and they could fund all these things. And now what happens is and this is exactly how it works. If you want to talk about why the rich get richer, it's because the rich get involved in these in Silicon Valley deals like Facebook and Amazon, not you because you're not allowed to. They buy the stock. They put big cash into these things, they scale them, and then they take them public. And then you could get in, but you're buying their stock that they're selling. So they bought this stock at $1 or $2. It's $20 or $30 or $40 when you're buying it, and they sell a piece and they keep the rest. They take their chips off the table, if you will. This completely reverses it, where now the public actually can buy stock in these companies. And when they go public, the institutions can participate then. It's the exact opposite. I think this is going to replace Silicon Valley. I really do. Because I'm going to tell you right now, just because you don't have money doesn't mean you're stupid. You could actually tell a good opportunity. The problem is you can't get involved with them. And so with equity crowd funds, I have a friend of mine I play golf with every week. And he's on, I don't know the platform it is, but he looks through all the different deals they have and he reads about them and he makes $500, $1,000. He makes investments and all. He goes, Sam, I got to hit one, right? He goes, I got to hit one. He goes, if I hit one, it'll cover the losses on all the other ones. And the cool part
is
the
VC model, right? So,
but now
anybody can do that. Yeah,
exactly. So he goes, I'm smart enough. He owns his own business. He goes, I'm smart enough to understand what's good and what's bad. The fact that they're on here, let me tell you, the hard part is putting the whole equity crowdfund together because you're talking about background checks, legal, audits, the whole 9 yards. So you're going to spend a minimum of $50,000. But once you get there, the world is yours because now you could start marketing and promoting your equity crowdfund. And you could be like, I'm on something called Issuance Express, which is owned by North Capital Partners. It's not one of the big ones. One of the bigger ones have massive amounts of people that it's like going to a newspaper, looking at all the articles, or going to YouTube and looking at all the videos. So they're scanning through and reading them. And then people are just placing bets. And on ours, we don't have that. So now I'm thinking to myself, well, shit, why did I get one of those? It could be a little bit better. But but it's, the good news about me is like I have big reach, so it doesn't matter. And then I have hundreds of podcasters on my platform, and those people have the audience that I'm looking for. So for me, it's different. But yeah, you get on these on these platforms that already have millions of people that basically are gambling junkies
Mhm.
that are looking for deals, and your job is to put out the proper information so they can understand it with videos like we did. And it's really cool. I will tell you, Josh, it's probably the smartest thing I ever did.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what I was getting into when I did it, but it was really
Right.
cool.
I mean, it's the fundraising equivalent of everything we've talked about, right? How the internet is changing the way media works through your company. How the internet is changing how Hollywood works. It's also changing how fundraising works. So definitely a theme I'm noticing here. Sam, I just want to finish up by asking a couple of the more general, we'll call it big questions. What would you say has been the hardest part so far of your entrepreneurial journey? And then maybe based on that, what's one big piece of advice you'd give to some of our listeners out there?
For me, the hardest part has been figuring out the model. So, when I talk to you about what I'm doing, you say it makes sense. Well, it only makes sense because I failed in every aspect trying to figure this out. So, it's like I hit every road bump you could possibly think of. We fell off every cliff you could possibly think of. And so because of that, you know exactly what not to do. So that the hardest thing was for me figuring it out. Okay. So once you figured it out, then it becomes much easier, especially if you have a marketplace or a void that needs to be filled. So your second question is what on that?
What would be your biggest piece of advice to maybe
Oh,
there's a listener, they're thinking about starting a business, they're at the beginning of their journey. What would you want to leave them with?
make sure you capitalize properly. Number one, make sure that the product you're selling fills a void, right? Like it's needed, and you have the ability to be able to market it and get it out there. And in some cases, you may sell a water filtration system. Well, there's a zillion of them out there. So what makes yours better? And maybe there's a story about it, but if you don't have the marketing ability to get that message out, you're going to probably fail. If your product fills a void, and the void would be, I'll give you an example. When YouTube kicked off all the podcasters that were talking about COVID and saying that the vaccine was no good, those people had nowhere to go. And Rumble filled that void. And Rumble has a $3 billion market cap right now. Okay. So you're getting into bigger stuff. In my case, there is no YouTube. The industry is Fox, CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, and every radio station and every newspaper that's folding, and they have nowhere to go. So I'm the void. So when something like this is like somebody creating the telephone that replaces the telegraph. There is no other one. So I'm the industry leader in this space. But if you have something that fills a void, it's extremely important because that's your scale, right? That's what's good. You're solving a problem. And I'd say, think it through, figure out if your product solves a problem. And then the next step is if you have the product, how do you market it? So those would be the best and the advice I could give people. If you're doing a capital raise, the equity crowdfund, I would highly recommend it if you have the capital to do it.
Awesome. Sam, this has been really great getting to learn about the business, the model, all these more kind of like innovative ways that industries are changing. If people want to find out more about you or your company or your crowdfunding, where do you recommend that they go?
Go to yournews.com. If you're a consumer of news, we have it. Okay. Daily. If you're a if you're interested in becoming a news reporter, you would scroll down to the bottom of the page and there's something that says become a citizen journalist. If you click that, there's an application you can fill out and you could become a local news reporter in your area. And from an investment standpoint, at the bottom there, right where become a citizen journalist is, or something that says invest, it'll take you to a website called Issuance Express, which is our page on there, which explains what we're doing. You could read about it. you think it makes sense, you could make a small investment or a big investment or nothing. Or if you're just interested in figuring out how we did it, that's our page. And then you could look at other equity crowdfunding sites because they're, to me, I would never. And by the way, that's all I've ever done is raise capital. The only thing I've ever done is raise capital. As far as I'm concerned, institutional players, we don't need them. And the reason for that is my pool of people now is basically 300 million people. And all those people are looking for exciting opportunities. But now you can get little bits of money from lots of people. So it really just comes down to figuring it out and marketing it. And if you have a product and the public accepts your product, there's a demand, you'll get all the money you need.
Awesome. And we'll have links to those in the description below, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Sam, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Josh. Anytime.